Hi everyone, I'm Josh from Showcase, and today I wanted to talk about fidget spinners, specifically about the bearings that come with fidget spinners and how those can affect spin times. So what we have here is a pretty common looking fidget spinner. This one I ordered off of Amazon. And the first thing that I want to talk to you about is the bearings that come inside fidget spinners. Now, most generic fidget spinners come with something called a 608 bearing. And I'm just going to pop that out so you can get a closer look. Now these 608 bearings are, it's a pretty old design actually. This has been around for well over 50 years. These were originally designed for use in vacuum cleaners and later on became kind of the de facto bearing for action sports like skateboarding and rollerblading. You can see that most of these bearings follow a similar design, which is 8 ball bearings surrounded by a metal race. And then within those, there's often a bearing shield there. And these are what allow this bearing to spin freely. These metal ball bearings racing against the outside of the bearing, it gives it its rotation there. So this bearing is a generic 608 bearing. This is probably around $1 at cost, very similar to a low-end skateboard bearing. So I'm just going to pop this in here and give this a spin and see how this affects the spin time on this bearing here. Oops. So I'm going to give this a spin right now. And we saw around a 10 to 15 second spin time on that bearing. So my big question when I found this spinner originally was, what happens if you put in a top-of-the-line 608 bearing? Obviously, bearings vary out there in terms of price and quality. So the first thing that I did was I went out to my local skateboard store, and I purchased a pack of Bones Swiss Precision skateboard bearings. This was a $70 package of bearings. It came with 8 bearings inside it. And this is, from skateboarding's perspective, the top-of-the-line bearing that you can purchase. It's a ceramic construction. It's resistant to rust. The quality of the shield on these is supposed to be fantastic, and the longevity of the bearing is supposed to be exceptional. So let's just take a look here and see what happens when I replace this generic $1 bearing with ostensibly what's a $9 bearing if you break this out in terms of cost. So here we have our Bones 608 bearing. Great. Now already I can feel that the bearing does feel a little bit smoother in my hands. And we do see that the spin time on this did increase slightly. It looks like we got around 15 to 20 seconds of spin time off of that particular bearing. But it's still not quite where I want that spin time to be at. So now I want to talk about the Jitter Spin, which we sell exclusively at Showcase, and how the difference in the bearing design between these two items impacts the spin time. So first I'm going to pop off the shield to the Jitter Spin, and let's take a look at what we have here. Here, instead of a 608 bearing, like we saw on this generic fidget spinner, we're actually seeing an R188 bearing. Now, you can see that the R188 bearing is significantly smaller than the 608 bearing, and it's also lacking some of the other features that you'll see there, such as the plastic shield on the outside. And you'll see that the ball bearings on the inside are also significantly smaller. So this bearing will spin differently in 2 ways. First off, these smaller ball bearings on the inside of this construction mean that it allows for less friction against the race of the bearing. That less friction actually translates to a longer spin time. The second thing that this bearing allows us to do in terms of construction is that it allows us to use less space in the center of the jitter spin itself. the extra space that we save is actually allowed for more plastic to be injected into the design of the spinner shell itself. That extra plastic translates to more mass on the fidget spinner itself. And as we know, mass is one of the key factors to allowing a fidget spinner to spin freely and for a long time. So let's just take a quick look at how that translates to a real spin here. Right off the bat, we can see that that 188 bearing has a significantly longer spin time than either of the 608 bearings that we tested there. Typically, we see spin times of between 1.5 minutes and 2 minutes on this 188 bearing. And I'm going to stop that because that's going to keep going. But while these two spin toys may appear similar in terms of construction, I would highly encourage you to take a look at the bearings that are behind these bearing shields on any spin toy that you're considering. After we've researched this, we have not yet found a bearing that can surpass this 188 bearing in terms of spin times. Like I said, even a high-end skateboarding bearing at $70 a pack, replacing a generic bearing in one of these generic spin toys, doesn't seem to translate to a longer spin time than what we're seeing in our Jitter Spin. So again, the Jitter Spin's available exclusively at Showcase. Check for that 188 bearing and be confident that you're getting the Jitter Spin with the longest spin time on the market.